Most people say they have faith, but when life presents two paths, the direction they choose tells the real story.
So today, we're diving into an incredible ancient story. It's all about loss, loyalty, and hope. We're talking about facing these impossible choices, and finding your way when it feels like everything is lost. And believe me, it asks some questions that are just as real for us today as they were thousands of years ago. Think about it. We've all been there, right? That pull between what you want for yourself, your dreams, and your duties to the people who count on you. Do you chase your own ambition, or do you stick by the people who need you? Well, that exact tension, it's the very heart of the story we're getting into today. All right, so our story kicks off with a woman named Naomi, and she is at the absolute end of her rope. She's been living in a foreign country, Moab, for about a decade to escape a famine back home. And in that time, she has lost everything. Her husband is gone, and both of her sons, they're gone too. So word gets back to her that the famine back home in Judah is finally over, and she decides, okay, it's time to go back, but she makes this gut-wrenching decision. She turns to her two daughters-in-law, who are also widows now, and basically tells them, go home, go back to your own families. In her mind, sticking with her means a future of absolutely nothing. Now, Naomi's logic here, it comes from a place of love, but it is just steeped in despair. First, she points out the obvious. I don't have any more sons for you to marry, which was a really important custom back then for a widow's security. Then she says, look, I'm too old to get married again and have more kids. But the real kicker is her third point. She genuinely believes her future is bitter, and it just isn't fair to drag them down with her. She's trying to protect them from her own pain. Okay, so Naomi has laid it all out there. Her very logical, very bleak argument for why they should leave. And this sets up this incredibly powerful moment of decision for her two daughters-in-law. They're facing the exact same choice, but their answers couldn't be more different. And this is where everything splits. On one hand, you have Orpah. She makes the practical, totally sensible choice. She listens to Naomi's reasoning, she weeps, kisses her goodbye, and she heads back to her family, her people, her gods. It's an honest, completely understandable decision. And then there's Ruth. She defies all that logic. She refuses to leave. She chooses this path of just absolute uncertainty and loyalty over any kind of personal security. And this is the heart of it all. Ruth's vow is one of the most radical statements of loyalty you will ever hear. She isn't just saying, oh, I'll stick with you. No. She is completely surrendering her entire identity, her home, her country, her culture, even her religion. She's leaving it all behind to tie her fate, for better or worse, completely to Naomi's. This is an act of just profound sacrificial love. So with that incredible vow from Ruth, the two of them journey on, and they finally make it back to Naomi's hometown, Bethlehem. But listen, this is no happy homecoming. The mood shifts and it gets heavy. This is where Naomi has to confront her past and the crushing weight of everything she's lost. When the women of the town see her and recognize her, she just stops them in their tracks. And her response is just raw anguish. She says, don't you dare call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara. She feels like God himself has turned on her, that he's the one who took everything. She isn't hiding her pain. She's not trying to be strong. She's putting all of her suffering right out there for everyone to see. This name change is so significant. By demanding to be called Mara, or bitter, Naomi is basically redefining her entire identity through the lens of her pain. It's this public announcement that the pleasant woman who left all those years ago, she's gone, and she's been replaced by someone who's just been hollowed out by grief. And right there, just when the story hits rock bottom, when it feels like all is lost in this sea of bitterness and despair, the narrative makes this subtle, tiny, but incredibly important turn. So let's just recap where we are for a second. Naomi's back home, but she feels completely empty. She's literally renamed herself Bitter. She has one loyal daughter-in-law, sure, but no prospects, no food, and no future. It really feels like this is the end of the story. Or so it seems. But it's not the end, not even close. The chapter ends with what sounds like a throwaway detail. But this little line, this is everything. In a story that's been drenched in famine and emptiness and loss, the word harvest is this incredibly powerful symbol of new life, of provision. This tiny detail, dropped in right at their lowest moment, is the first glimmer of hope. It's this quiet little hint that maybe a new season is starting, and maybe, just maybe, they haven't been abandoned after all. So, what can we take away from this intense journey of loss and loyalty? Well, this story actually offers some really profound lessons about faith and suffering and hope. First, it shows us that real, true loyalty can sometimes fly in the face of all practical logic. Second, the story makes room for real, raw grief. Naomi's bitterness isn't brushed aside, it's acknowledged as a legitimate part of her journey. Third, we see that hope doesn't always show up with a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's as quiet as a single stalk of barley in a field. And finally, and this is so important, hardship is not a sign that you've done something wrong or that you're on the wrong path. I mean, this whole story just completely pushes back on this idea that if you have enough faith, your life will be easy and pain-free. Naomi is a woman of faith, and yet she suffers immensely. The trials she goes through aren't a sign of failure. They're actually presented as a necessary part of her path, the very process that's going to lead her toward redemption. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. What if we reframed how we look at our own challenges? What if the hard things, the bitter moments, aren't detours from the life we're supposed to be living? What if they are, in fact, an essential part of the road we are meant to travel?